In another video, I tried to talk about what I thought Bitcoin specifically's biggest flaw is. But I think that there is a issue with all cryptocurrencies, and they represent nothing. And I think that is a silly concept. You can try to argue that currencies represent nothing today because they're fiat currencies. However, they represent the country that issues them. So there is a specific representation. And I think that there is something that could really change how cryptocurrency functions, how useful it is, and what you can do with it. You could literally use a cryptocurrency and its purchasing power as it increases in value to do a vast majority of things. If you are worried about, saving the rainforests or just keeping all those resources intact without being completely destroyed, you could create purely a cryptocurrency that goes out there, and when it gets to a certain point, it starts trying to purchase things like, whole swaths of forest in the Amazon all around the world, in which basically you make that currency based on all of that land, all that forest. And so, outside of the base currency, it becomes worth something. And then the users can then decide what to do with those resources. If they want to just hold on to them and keep them fully intact, then the users would decide that. And so you could actually go out and start using cryptocurrencies. I talked in another video about using a water currency, an aqua currency, going out there and buying the freshwater rights, in which you would then have to try to basically purchase the currency, the crypto, to have any access to the water. So that in the end, all the water rights, freshwater rights, could act literally like a cryptocurrency, in which major corporations would actually have to go out, or whomever would have to go out. And fresh water might not be so cheap that they could waste it for the future, if you're worried about that. I personally am worried about global warming. And if you don't believe in global warming, you should still believe in what they keep saying is climate change. And climate change, you know how the climate's always changing, it's changing to a world in which it's going to be way drier in certain areas and way wetter in others. So basically in the United States, the West is going to get drier and drier through most of it, and the Midwest is going to have major flooding. And what this is going to do all around the world, it's going to put our food source at risk. And if we have a major issue growing crops for multiple years, then that's when whole systems collapse. That's when countries go into civil wars. And no country is immune to the second that the food supply dries up, mass chaos developing. But we don't necessarily have to live in a world like that. And I believe we could start expanding out greenhouses enough all throughout the world to just be our food source. We could start growing in greenhouses. And I would argue that these would use less water. They would be able to be more controlled so that you would have less infestation. You might be able to control when things ripen at certain times so that you don't have mass crops of certain things at certain times of year, but you have them year round if you protect and have greenhouses in certain areas that are warmer and you get certain level of water to those greenhouses. You could actually have deserts full of greenhouses in which you use aquifers or other systems to get water to them. And then they are a closed system so that there's not as much evaporation, so that they're more efficient. And I think you could do a cryptocurrency. I personally would call it an Eden coin, if I was going with the coin theme, because of the Garden of Eden theme, but that's me. However, you could go out And instead of just having a regular cryptocurrency, basically what happens is one way of getting new cryptocurrencies would be the mining aspect. Another way would be greenhouses. So once a greenhouse, all of its cost to produce, basically you'd have to go there and make sure that it's actually functioning. So once a full greenhouse is completely constructed, it could be worth a Bitcoin, 10 Bitcoins, 100 Bitcoins basically, although these would be called Eden coins in this analogy. So you could develop, maybe rationally at some point for every time someone creates a greenhouse and attaches it to this system, it is now automatically receives 100 Eden coins. And then the argument later on would be possibly that one Eden coin could represent some level of food. Maybe it's the concept of like 1 year of food. That if no matter what's going on, you have this Eden coin, you can go to these places with that and purchase 1 year's supply of food with one Eden coin, or however it develops. But you could still use cryptocurrency to start actually making things in the real world. And it could be anything. I'm arguing for initially trying to wrap it around aspects of resources. But you could create a cryptocurrency and then it would be tied to a concept, and so that it would have more worth than whatever it is. As of right now, Bitcoin has zero worth. It's attached to nothing in the real world. It is purely fiat. I'm arguing to create a system where a cryptocurrency is attached to the construction of greenhouses in the hopes that we produce enough of these that we protect our food supply from climate change. Because global warming is going to affect things in which it becomes harder and harder to consistently grow food like we do today. And even if you don't believe in what I'm arguing for global warming, most of you should be arguing that the climate changes and well, guess what? The climate is changing into an environment where it's going to be harder to grow food. So if we created places where it was still easy and consistent to grow food, then we would have zero chance of the world collapsing because of a massive drought and floods everywhere 1 year. And so, once again, I think that we need to develop cryptocurrencies to actually have a real world representation of something. And I'm arguing that I think the most important ones would be creating a water currency, aqua coin, if we're going with coin theme, and then a garden coin or an Eden coin or something along that food source that would develop greenhouses. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you understand what my argument is here. And the other aspect is that you could make it so that all these greenhouses need to function on however you are mining the cryptocurrency, and that they have to update their systems X amount, so that you are constantly having a strong encryption that would also be a computer apparatus for these greenhouses also. So they could typically be used for encrypting, however they could also be used to monitor all of these. Thank you. Have a great day.